Because when you allow yourself to honor both your softness and your drive and your uniqueness, something powerful happens. Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, the podcast empowering empathic women who feel misunderstood, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their intuition, begin to trust their sensitivities, find inner clarity, and show up with embodied, unstoppable confidence in their daily lives. I am your host, Olivia Ashley, an empath and intuitive, and I am so happy you're here. Welcome back to Intuition Unlocked. Today I want to talk about something that has been shifting inside my own awareness lately, which is the realization that while slow living has been deeply healing and supportive in many seasons of my life, I'm beginning to understand that it isn't the entire picture for everyone or for every phase of life. And so I want to explore what exists in the space between constant hustle and constant slowing down. A way of living that allows us to honor both our need for presence and our desire to create, build, and expand. Because for many of us, especially those who spent years operating in this hustle culture, learning to slow down was a reclamation of self. It helped us reconnect to our bodies, our intuition, our families, creativity, and parts of ourselves that have been neglected in the name of productivity. The slow living movement truly has offered something incredibly valuable: permission to step off the treadmill and remember that life is not meant to be lived in constant urgency. The slow living movement is something that I've truly admired and practiced in my own life. And yet, something I've personally begun to notice is that after a period of this deep slowing, there's another feeling that's begun to emerge: a sense of restlessness, a spark of ambition returning, ideas wanting to move, and my curiosity wanting to expand again, but not from pressure or fear or even slow, but more from aliveness and presence and a more balanced state. So this is what I want to talk about today, because there came a point where I realized when I wasn't acting on the ideas that felt alive inside of me, and when I was only moving in this slow state, I didn't necessarily feel more peaceful the way I used to feel. I actually began to feel more anxious, smaller, and disconnected from my sense of purpose. I noticed that while slowing down over the last year or two has really helped me heal, stay more embodied, and reclaim my sense of self and replenish my nervous system. Staying in this exclusively slow pace, now that I have found space back within myself and body, actually doesn't feel that good anymore. I've noticed this energy wanting to move forward again. And so understanding this has felt important because it has helped me understand that the goal was never about simply living only slow or only fast. I've come to learn that the real goal of life and how I exist has been rhythm. Because some seasons require restoration, others require movement. Some days will ask for stillness, while others invite expression, creativity, and forward momentum. And when you try to force yourself into a single lifestyle philosophy, whether it's relentless hustle or perpetual slowing, you can unintentionally disconnect from your own internal guidance system. For decades, the hustle culture we grew up with has told us that success requires constant motion, constant overworking, and sacrificing presence for productivity. And this way of being led many people, especially us sensitive women, to burnout, to overwhelm, to depletion. And so to counter this hustle, this idea and movement of slow living arose because it became a powerful corrective to the hustle. It became a reminder that rest, nourishment, relationships, and intentionality matter deeply. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I've found so much beauty in this movement and way of living. Yet what often happens culturally is that the pendulum swings from one extreme to another. When we move away from burnout, we sometimes begin to believe that ambition itself is the problem, rather than the way we were taught to pursue it. And yet ambition, creativity, and the desire to build something meaningful are not inherently harmful. In fact, they are often expressions of our life force wanting to move through us. This is where I see a deeper invitation arising, At least that's what I believe. One where we are learning how to integrate both, to live in a way where our pace is guided not by external expectations, but by our internal attunement. And this is what I think of as intuitive living. It's a way of being where you are so connected to yourself, your energy, your nervous system, and the season of your life and the world around you that you naturally know when it's time to rest and when it's time to move. And you can give yourself those as needed. So instead of forcing yourself to be slow and live from that pace, especially when inspiration is alive, or forcing yourself to push when your body actually needs restoration, you begin to move with your own rhythm and let that be the compass and the guide. If you can grasp and feel and listen and enact life through your own rhythm, you make a powerful choice of saying, I don't have to stand in any which one camp. I can stand in my own, and I can believe and shift and alter and flow with whatever comes forward. Because I'm definitely the person who would love to subscribe to one specific way of being, whether that's through a way of eating or a belief system or a movement like this. And yet what I've come to realize as I age is that our bodies change, our needs change, we evolve, we grow, and some systems might certainly feel really good at some parts of your life, and you should listen to that and explore. That's part of being curious and creative and open and listening to this rhythm. But we often will subscribe to other people's rhythms versus ourselves. And that's a key part to understand because your rhythm will not look the same as others. For some people, slow living may continue to perfectly align with their dreams and values and way of being. And if that's you, you should absolutely continue being in that space. For others, maybe hustling and shifting and being in that badass boss space really feels good, and that's where they thrive. You should stay in that space then. But I think for a lot of us, there's somewhere in the middle where there's a season of expansion that calls you forward, and then there's a season of rest that wants you to turn inward and reflect. And in this space, everything becomes possible. Creativity can be expressed when wanted. Rest can be taken as needed. And when you meet this space, I see ambition returning not as pressure, but as possibility. Because when you allow yourself to honor both your softness and your drive and your uniqueness, something powerful happens. You can begin to feel more whole, more energized, more in tune with yourself, and capable of sustaining whatever you want to build or move towards, because it is no longer fueled by urgency or exhaustion, but you're living by alignment, by your rhythm. My invitation here today is to ask you to reclaim all sides of yourself, to not live so much in the extremes or black and white, but allow yourself to find somewhere in the gray or in the rainbow, either way. Because there is a version of you that is absolutely gentle, intuitive, and deeply present. And there is also a version of you that is bold, visionary, and willing to move forward whatever she is here to create. I believe these parts were never meant to compete with each other. They're meant to work together, but we're not taught that. We're not shown that way of being. But that's what I see happening when you reclaim both your softness and your inner warrior, your stillness and your momentum and your rest and your ambition. You begin to create a way of living that is sustainable, not just for a season, but for your lifetime, because you stop trying to fit yourself into someone else's pace and you begin trusting the intelligence of your own timing. And from that place, life starts to feel less like something you're chasing or trying to slow down or like you're trying to fit into someone else's mold. You start moving and living with conscious intention, and that helps you align with who you are becoming. And you don't even have to know who she is, but you trust that it's going to be beautiful because you've anchored into this space. So from here, the question becomes, how do you actually live this way? How do you identify your rhythm instead of defaulting to these cultural extremes? I believe the first step is learning to distinguish between exhaustion and resistance. Sometimes you need rest, true rest and recovery, the kind where your body is asking to recalibrate and where slowing down brings clarity and steadiness. And sometimes this takes weeks, months, years. So it's okay to be in this state however long you need. But sometimes what we interpret as I need to slow down is actually rooted in a fear of expansion and change. It's the discomfort that comes when you're stretching into a bigger version of yourself. And slowing down in those moments doesn't actually restore you, it keeps you stuck. Our nervous systems all love when we can turn our phone on airplane mode or watch a comfort movie or tune out for a few hours. But if you're continually, perpetually doing that for the sake of feeling like you're slowing down, you really need to look at if there's something under the surface. Because for a lot of us, there could be a fear that's making you prioritize the comforts rather than stretching into a growth space, into a space of possibility. And that's the hardest part probably of learning your rhythm, because it means you have to get honest about which is which, about where you are, any limiting beliefs you have or things holding you back, and what you're being called to anchor and move forward with. Living intuitively in this rhythm also means noticing your natural energy patterns. And these are different for everyone, which is beautiful because it gives you permission to show up how you need to show up. But it also feels very limiting or confusing when we compare ourselves to those around us who have different energy patterns. So to identify what yours are, there are some questions you can ask yourself, such as, when do you feel most alive? What time of day? When you're doing what? What does that look like? When does creativity flow? When do you feel you're most inspired or on, or like you're tuned in and can let it open? What environments support your momentum instead of draining it? What do those spaces look like? What's that container you need? Who's involved in that space? And lastly, what pace allows you to feel both grounded and lit up? Where do you land? How does your energy naturally show up and want to be expressed? Living in rhythm isn't about managing every hour perfectly. It's about designing your life in a way that honors your seasons. Some seasons are for planting. They're quiet, internal, and restorative. Some seasons are for growing, stretching, experimenting, building. And some seasons are for harvesting, sharing, launching, and expanding. And when you can stop judging yourself for being in one season or another, or forcing yourself to show up in one way or stay in a season far too long, you free up so much energy because you start moving with it versus forcing against it. You also begin building a life that feels more meaningful because it's responsive to who you truly are, not who you used to be. And lastly, meaning often comes from movement. It comes from acting on the ideas that keep nudging you, from allowing curiosity to guide you somewhere new, and from letting ambition be an expression of your aliveness rather than a measure of your worth. So living in your rhythm might look like resting deeply on days your nervous system needs safety without the guilt, or working with focus and intensity when your inspiration strikes without an apology, or creating structures that support your goals while protecting your well-being. It also might mean building slowly and steadily, or sprinting in aligned bursts, then intentionally integrating afterward. The point here isn't about the speed. That's what we need to let go of. The point is the attunement that happens. Because when you're attuned, you no longer feel like you're betraying yourself, whether you're resting or rising. So as we close today, I want you to ask yourself, what season am I actually in right now? Don't worry about the season you think you should be or the one that looks best on social media or even feels safest. Ask, what is the real one? And then what would it look like to trust that season enough to live in rhythm with it? You don't have to reject slow living to evolve beyond it. You also don't have to return to hustle to honor ambition. You get to let go of both of those, and you simply get to grow. You get to refine and expand your capacity for both presence and power. And maybe this next level of living isn't louder. Maybe it's just more honest. If this episode resonated with you, if it gave you language to something you've been quietly feeling, I invite you to share it with someone who might also be navigating this in-between space. These conversations matter because they remind us we're not alone in our evolution. And if you're in a season of recalibrating your rhythm or honoring both your softness and your drive, know this community is here to walk that path with you. I'm here to walk that path with you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you feel called, leave a review because it helps more women find these conversations and begin trusting their own timing. Remember, you're allowed to move slowly, you're allowed to move boldly, you're allowed to move anywhere in between. Just do it within your own rhythm. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on Intuition Unlocked. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of insight, guidance, or intuitive inspiration. To dive deeper into our community and get access to exclusive content, head to my website at www.olivia-ashley.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You can also connect with me on Instagram at wildlyolivia for daily inspiration and updates. Remember, your intuition is your superpower. Trust it, nurture it, and let it guide you. Until next time, I'm Olivia Ashley, and I can't wait to connect with you again.